Hi guys. So in this chapter, we will be focusing on the flop, mostly when we are the aggressor in a single race pot, and we will be talking about how to deal with that when we are in position and when we are out of position. So the first thing that I want to say is that simple is better. And most poker players they ask whether it's whether it's better to have two different bet sizes, or more, or some players just prefer one bet size. And basically the question is, do you really need both bet sizes? And like, if I increase the amount of bet sizes, the variation of bet sizes, do I really get a higher EV? And so today I'm just gonna touch a bit about that. So personally, my strategy when I am in position and the aggressor, I would bet 33 pot all the time, regardless of whether this is a 3 bet pot or if this is a single race pot. So I do this. So actually, the point of the strategy is to bet a small size. So it doesn't matter whether it's 33%, 40%, or even 25%. The size doesn't really matter, but you have to adjust your strategy based on the size that you choose. So, like I was saying, if you do have two ranges, meaning two sizes, like 33% pot and 66% pot, what is the point of that? And which strategy is actually a harder strategy for your opponent to counter? So let me give you an example where, let's say if you bet 66% on a 10 deuce 3 board, um, most opponents will just fold if they have a hand like 8-9. Occasionally they might check raise aggressively if they have the backdoor flush draw, but against a 33% pot bet, they actually have to call, because of the backdoor straight draw and the backdoor flush draw. If let's say they have a hand like 8-9 on 10-3 deuce, with let's say a suit that would give them the backdoor flush draw. So this is really tough for most low stake players, because they find that it's really tough calling 8-9 suited out of position, and against a 33% pot bet, they have to. But when you bet 66% into the pot, our opponent has a really straightforward time where they just continue if they have it, and they don't continue if they don't have anything. So basically, if they have a C4 hand, or they just fold. But when you bet 33%, some C4 hands are a call, and they make huge mistakes by just folding those. So um, that's the general theory. But to give you guys a clearer example, this is PO Solver's. So I ran a simulation on PO Solver, where we bet 33% pot with 100% frequency on King 9 for a rainbow when we are on the button against the big blind. And assuming the big blind always checks to us, our EV is 7.3389, as stated here. If we were to bet 100% of the time with a 33% pot size, so we bet $4 when the starting pot is about $11 over here. But if let's say we were to adopt a different strategy where we bet 33% pot and 66% pot as well, so two different sizings here, our EV is 7.3648, so meaning out of the $11 in the pot, we are entitled to 7.36 of that. And so it's a small difference in EV, and you can tell that more bet sizings in this case would actually increase your EV. But the first thing to realize is that if I were to pull up PO Solver, you can see how these two bet sizes, it's really hard to differentiate when to bet these hands. And let's say if we look at the 66% range, we are supposed to be betting Queen 9 suited 37% of the time, and then we are supposed to be betting 33% with Queen 9 suited 40% of the time, and then we are supposed to be checking another 22% of the time. And this is really hard to execute, because it's really tough to even remember the strategy for one hand perfectly. And if you want to do this for every single hand across many different boards, it's just gonna be really ridiculously tough. And so the main question is, for a 0.2355% difference in EV, is it really worth it? So which strategy is actually easier? Should we just bet 33% pot 100% of the time and just go forward from there? Or should we have two different sizings? So definitely, because of my style and the way I've been playing, I would say, on the flop, just choose one size, make it really straightforward. If you want to bet pot or even more than pot as your one size strategy, yeah, that's fine. But do realize, like, which is harder to play against, a small size or a big size. So yeah, that's all I have to say for being in position. So I think what's tricky is when we face a check raise, because when we bet small, we do face more check raises than usual, and then we have to ask ourselves a few things, where you know how are we adapting to the check raise. So if it's a reg, he realizes that we are playing this size, and he understands the strategy behind the bet size, and therefore we have to be more loose. We have to continue with more hands, more marginal hands when we face a check raise. So on King 9-4, if we have pocket 8s and we face a check raise, we might have to continue, even though it's a low C2 hand, a low marginal hand. But against a fish, where the fish doesn't really raise with much bluffs, he mostly has King X, a set, then we don't really have to continue as wide. So yeah, in general, when we bet a small size and we face a check raise, then we have to continue. A good example is, let's say, ace queen suited with the backdoor flush draw, in two of the scenarios, where if, let's say, we had ace queen over here, and we bet 66% of the pot, we are actually folding to a check raise. But if we bet 33% of the pot and we face a check raise, with a backdoor flush draw, we are mostly calling about 80% of the time, and then occasionally 20% of the time we just fold. Why? Because the backdoor flush draw matters more when the pot is smaller and our stack size are larger because of the stack to pot ratio. But if you start with a 66% bet and you face a raise, the pot is already really big, and ace queen suited doesn't matter as much, the backdoor flush draw doesn't matter as much, the backdoor straight draw doesn't matter as much. What matters is who has top pair, who can make more trips on the river, and who can have more two pairs. So yeah, that's really the difference. So do think about your strategy when you are facing a check raise as well. So let's talk a bit about when you are out of position and the aggressor. So normally for me, I choose two different sizings, and they are really simple to remember, as because we are out of position. So when we do face a small board, there is no need to bet large when we have a better range, when we are the aggressor. So betting small on dry boards like deuce 4 is really standard, where there aren't really much draws. It's all about who has more pocket pairs, who has the bigger pocket pairs, and who has more overcards, and that's us because we are the aggressor. But on wet boards, we tend to bet bigger because we are out of position, and if we want to build the pot as the aggressor, we don't want to give our villain the chance to see free cards at a cheap price. And if we bet small on the flop, and he might have the opportunity to check back the turn, if we do check to him on the turn, and it can be costly because we are giving two free cards for a really cheap price when we bet small on wet boards. And on wet boards, the runouts can change really differently really fast. So on queen 10-7, if a 8 or a 9 comes, aces is not really worth as much, because what matters is who has more straights and who has more two pairs. But think about deuce 4. If you have aces, not really many turn cards are going to change that. A 4 or a deuce is not going to change anything, because a deuce or a 4 shouldn't be in most of our opponent's range, because nobody's calling a hand like deuce 3 suited on the button. So yeah, having a two-side strategy is my default strategy. And then when you are out of position and you decide to bet, do think about whether checking is better, because checking it should be a decision for the person who is out of position. So in this scenario, we have three different options: bet small, bet big, or check. But betting small or betting big depends on the board already. So it's just between betting one size and checking again. So compared to when we were in position, now we have the extra option of checking. And think about whether the board is better for you, because is 998 better for the under the gun player or the button player? Because you have more aces, you have more kings. But if you face a call under the on the button when you raise under the gun, it's really obvious that he has more 9x, because he has more hands like 9-8, 9-10, even more pocket 8s, pocket 9s. So these hands are somewhat in your range as well, but you kind of have like less 9-10s and like 9-8 suited as him, because these hands are not 100% open under the gun. If you think about the pre-flop GTO strategy, these hands are just balance hands. They are in there because they protect your range, and not because they are really strong hands that we are excited to play when we receive them under the gun. But if you think about a board like Ace 8-9, it's better for the under the gun player compared to the big blind or even the button, because we have more aces, we have more ace king, we have more pocket 8s, pocket 9s, all these kind of stuff. So when you see a board, before you think about, there are two things that you should be thinking about, whether I should bet small or bet big, or should I just not bet at all, because this board is really unfavorable for me. And yeah, sure, in low stakes, when people check raise you on 998, they tend to have it, or they just have a hand like Jack 10 that's really face up. But if you play in higher stakes and you're betting all the time at the under the gun position, the button or the big blind can just check raise you 100% of the time, and you will find that it's really hard to play when you have to call triple barrels with really marginal hands like kings, when there are a lot of runouts that can be really bad for you, because a 7, a 6, a 10, a jack, a queen, all these cards can be really bad runouts. And you gotta ask yourself, do you really want to inflate the pot right now and then fold on the turn in the river? Then probably not. So do think about that. Alright, so that's all for this chapter, and we will move on to talk about the next chapter.